name is Paige Nelson, and I am on staff at the Sentinel. Today I'm in the superintendent's office with Mr. Doug Williams. Thank you for meeting with me. I understand that campus security is a big deal now here at SISD, and we'd like to ask you a few questions.
Sure. Look forward to it.
Okay. After the school shootings of last spring and our own lockdown here at SHS, you and our school board have decided to make security changes. Can you tell us about that process?
We actually started school board conversation. They authorized a security task force, and the task force was made up of community members, members of the school administration. The community members were parents and also members of the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, and the parents all have some sort of either police or security background. I met with them for a number of sessions in the spring and summer. The first thing that they did was they actually did some observations for us. I asked them to go on campuses and see where we had some issues we needed to address. And then they brought those findings back. We discussed those findings and we looked at some measures on how we needed to go forward, tightening our security. You know, Paige, one of the things that we felt like, and I've said this a number of times, we believe that we have a secure campus, a secure environment here. Even before the Parkland shooting, we felt like that this was a secure place for kids to go to school. But there's no such thing as a 100% secure place. Right. And so we felt like we needed to take some proactive steps. And so the first step was meeting with this security group. From that, the security group was able to make some recommendations to the school board. They met with the school board during June and made some recommendations to them. Those recommendations, the school board took them under advisement, and we've spent the rest of the summer doing some implementation.
What physical updates are being made to our schools so they're safer?
So after the security team got through meeting, they made a number of recommendations to our board, and myself and Keith Adams, who is our director of operations, went to work on doing a lot of implementation. Giving you a little background, Mr. Adams he was an administrator in the Mesquite ISD before he retired, and he works for us on a part-time basis. And he's got a lot of experience in school safety and school security. And then he was also a member of the task force that we put together. We have done a number of things. The first thing that you're going to see is we actually have added a second buzz-in at every entrance. When you go to the entrance of the school, you have to be buzzed in before you're let in the school. When you're buzzed in the first time, you go into the area that we call the man trap. Mm-hmm. And you'll have to be buzzed from the man trap into the main office. And so we feel like that's going to be an added security feature. One of the things that occurred during the lockdown that we had in the spring was our teachers indicated they had a hard time getting their doors locked. You know, it's a stressful situation that they have to find the key and they have to go over and lock the door. And now it will be as simple as them pulling the door shut and turning a latch, very similar to like a deadbolt. And so that's going to help them be able to get their doors locked in a lot more timely fashion. We've added a number of security cameras, and then we also have our security cameras that are going to be web-based, so that it has access to campus administration, but it also has access to local law enforcement. So we think that's going to be an added benefit. The other thing that we have talked about a lot this summer is what do we do in those new instructional spaces that we've designed. Just looking at the middle school expansion, when we did those, we put the roll-up doors in place. Mm-hmm. They're great for instruction. Our teachers and our kids use them every day, but they're not the most secure areas. Mm-hmm. So we have added some security features there at select classrooms that are going to make that a lot more secure environment. And as we're designing the the high school expansion, and we're designing the fourth campus, the intermediate campus, those security provisions are going to be put in place for those as well.
How has our faculty been trained to help us during a potential threat?
So the faculty at the right after Santa Fe, we actually had a session for the faculty that we talked about what to do in case of emergency situations. We followed that up. We actually had an active shooter training this summer where we did a Dallas County Sheriff's Office came out and did a simulation where there was a shooter in the building and some of our staff members went through scenarios. Not all of the teachers were able to participate in that, but a number of our teachers did, but maybe even more importantly, administration and the office staff did. That allowed us to evaluate where our procedures were, and we made some necessary adjustments. In fact, the morning that we're shooting this video, we had about an hour and a half session with office staff looking at a lot of those procedures and how we needed to be able to modify some of those communications and a number of those things. The main training piece that's going to take place for our teachers will take place during Staff Development Week. We talked a lot about what needs to be our next step, and really the security procedures that we have and the training for the teachers, while it's the same in generalities, when you talk about specifics, they need to be specific for each campus. The way Ms. Staley and her teachers have to take care of the elementary students is different than Mr. Sterling in the high school. So they will be having specific meetings and specific trainings for the teachers on each campus when we get to Staff Development Week next week. One of the important things that we did was we actually looked at some procedures, and we did an internal of that. Mr. Adams went to a safety conference this summer, and at the safety conference he brought back a recommendation from the Texas Safety Center, and the School Safety Center has come up with a chart, and in some of the classrooms that you've been in since forever, we've always had those flip charts that the teachers had. The flip charts are gone now, so we've actually got a one-pager that the one-pager will say, this is what you do in case of a lockdown, this is what you do in case of a lockout, which is new terminology. And so they're going through that new terminology, and the students will be trained in the new terminology as well, so that in case of each different scenario, that's going to be posted in the classrooms. The teachers will have copies. Even we're going to have copies for subs, should a substitute be in the room. Those are all important training pieces that we have. And again, not really a huge change from the norm, maybe just a different way of communicating and having that available for use.
So our faculty has been trained on what to do in a code red. How are we going to ensure students know what to do in a code red? Yeah,
and again, we're changing our terminology. So what has been taught and talked about as a code red going forward will actually be now referred to as lockdown.
Okay.
So students will be receiving lockdown training, so that they know what's going on, they know what the procedures are. And one of the things that I think that we need to emphasize in this is really just that we need that raised awareness for the students, and that will happen when that drill is done. Now, we don't want to over drill. Our first, first thing is safety, and we want to make sure safety is taken care of, but we also want you guys in class as much as possible as well. But I think you're going to see the lockdown done, and it's going to be done. The lockdown drill will be done, and it'll be done early. One of the things that we talked about in relation to the lockdown drill also is we run it as a simulation from our standpoint. There are certain things that have to happen for us if a lockdown occurs. So we've asked our high school, we've asked all of the administrations, all of the office staffs to communicate with us so that we can do our simulation on our side too.
Good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the new terminology is lockout. Is there a difference between a lockdown and a lockout?
Yeah, there is, and that's a great question. So we are going to two different terminologies. One of them is lockout. Lockout means that the building will be completely secured, nobody in the building, nobody out of the building, you know, even for, you know, not going to athletics or, you know, leaving the building for an ag project or anything, meaning no one's coming in the building, no one's going out of the building. When a lockout would be used is maybe there is some sort of risk in the area of some kind. A lockdown is the lockout, but it also has that added component of no one leaves the classroom, you are in, there is an imminent threat, so to speak. Last year, when we did, when the lockdown occurred here, we actually went to lockdown on all 3 campuses, but the threat was only at the high school. In retrospect, in hindsight, one of the things that we talked about coming out of that was we should have been in lockdown at the high school, but lock out on the other 2 because the threat had not been made at the other 2. So that was kind of a clarification and an aha moment we had with that. So that's the reason we have that clear distinction. This is the form that you're going to be able to see next year, and you'll see across lock out, lock down, evacuate, a shelter, and then hold. So those different terminologies that will be in place, and again, the teachers will be trained next week, and the students will be trained when you guys come back in a couple weeks. So.
Mr. Sterling sent a newsletter a couple days ago about students needing to wear ID badges to school. Why is it important for high school students to wear them daily?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And not only will high school students be wearing them daily, but all faculty and staff will be wearing the ID badges as well. I think that's the reality of a growing campus. You know, when we first started Sunnyvale High School way back when in 2009, when we started and we opened the building, one of the things that existed was we were just a small community. We had a couple hundred kids. You know, we're going to open with over 550 high school students, and you don't know everyone anymore. Mm-hmm. So that ID badge will be a very clear indicator that I'm a student at Sunnyvale High School and I'm supposed to be here. And if no one has, you know, if you don't have that badge on, you don't need to be here. And it will give our students the opportunity that if they see someone they don't recognize, they know if they don't have that badge, then it needs to be reported. We looked at a similar feature at the middle school. We felt like at the middle school, it'd be more difficult for our middle school students to keep up with them, and so we opted for our middle school students not to do that. So it'll only be for the high school, but it will also be for staff. You know, our staff is growing as well. We'll have close to 250 employees next year. And so we need that feature just to make sure that you're clearly identifiable, that you're supposed to be a part of the SISD team.
We have so many friends that have school resource officers on their campuses at their schools. Will we ever get a school resource officer?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes to the question. Let me give a little background. Again, going back to Sunnyvale being a small community, small school district, we never really felt the pressing need for that. We've had great response from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office over the years. In fact, last year during the lockdown, it was only a matter of minutes before Dallas County Sheriff's Office had a number of officers on campus. And I think that you'll continue to see that and that support from them. But we are going to be taking that next step. Now, when school starts in August, we are anticipating not having school resource officers, but actually having security guards. Now, what's the difference between a school resource officer and a security guard? And I think that's probably a question. They're both armed police officers, and that's important. So we will have armed presence on campus when school starts in a couple weeks. The school resource officer is more comprehensive in their duties, whereas the security guard is there for one reason, and that's for just protection. Okay. We anticipate transitioning to school resource officers at some point. There are a number of steps that you have to go through in relation to that. We don't know what it's going to look like exactly in relation to school resource officers. but we felt like with a little bit of a sense of urgency that we needed some armed presence when school started. Simply because we think that will put everybody at a little more ease. Mm-hmm. And so we opted to do security guards for the time being. But you can, our plans, our long-range plans are to have something more permanent in relation to SROs, either through the town of Sunnyvale or possibly even forming our own police force eventually.
Will these guards, or maybe later on SROs, will they be on all 3 campuses or just high school?
So what we're planning right now is we're actually planning to employ 2. We'll have 2 security guards in August, with the thought that one will pretty much set up permanent shop at the high school. The other one will float back and forth between the middle school and the elementary campus. Not saying that the one at the high school, can't go to the other campuses, but that's the tentative plan right now, is that we'll start with 2 security guards. So.
What can parents do to support these security efforts?
Let me address that, and also let me address what our students can do, because I think that the first answer is one and the same. We need both our teachers and our students and our parents to take on that social responsibility of reporting. Sometimes, Paige, in our world, in our society, if you report something that's going on, you're considered a snitch. Mm-hmm. That can't happen in this setting. If there's something suspicious that that someone has said, someone's posted on social media, that you feel like we as administration need to know about, that needs to be reported. And there are a number of different ways to do the report, and we'll be publicizing that. But the best way is always just stopping by the principal's office. You've got a high school principal that he's going to take care of business, so that if you go by and you report to Mr. Sterling or on the middle school campus, Mr. Tunnell, elementary, Ms. Staley, that this is something that's been said, that you've read on social media, it needs to happen, as does as with our parents. I think that is something that is very powerful. And we've talked a lot about the small community that Sunnyvale is. That is one way that I feel like Sunnyvale can be more secure than a lot of places. Things don't happen in Sunnyvale without everybody knowing about it, and I think that can be powerful as we really help to prevent some things that could be going on. So another thing that parents can do and need to be aware of is we have changed some security procedures, and we're going to be getting specific information out to them about some of those changes. The buzz-in system is going to be a change as well. In our meetings, we put some procedures in place. When parents come or any visitor comes to our campus and they hit the buzzer, we've told our office personnel to ask them a couple things. First of all, please tell us your name and what's the reason for your visit. Now, a lot of our parents that come on a regular basis, unfortunately, they're going to have to do the same. They're going to have to tell them their name and the reason for the visit. And I want our parents to know that I do want them to be a little inconvenienced. And I know that's a little counterintuitive, and when I've said that to some, they've said, you want us to be inconvenienced, and the answer is yes. When you go to an airport and you have to go through security at the airport, it's a little inconvenient to take your shoes off and take your belt off and everything else that you have to do. But in the world that we live in, it's necessary to keep our security in place for and really that started after 9/11, when the attack at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon occurred. I think when you're talking about school security, it will be a little inconvenience for them to be buzzed in twice each time. One of the things that we're asking is that when a visitor comes to one of our campuses, we're only going to let one visitor at a time in. And I'm not saying only one visitor at a time, but when they're buzzed in, only one person will come in and then the next person will be buzzed in. One of the things that we have found that have happened is the concept of tailgating. if 5 people come to the school at one time and all 5 are let in, what happens if one of those people is actually someone that's there to do harm? So we just ask for them to be patient with us in the process. It is going to be inconvenient, but yet it's something that we want in place to make sure that our kids are safe. We ask that our parents make us aware of anything that they feel like is going on that needs to be addressed. I've always prided ourselves on the fact that I think that we listen to our parents. You know, if there's a situation that's going on that they feel like we need to look at, don't hesitate to contact me. The construction company knows that our students are back August the 22nd, and we've got to have a secure building. Mm-hmm. So you know, everything from we've used the band hall, and we did that in the spring. We used the band hall as the entrance in the spring. That will continue to be the temporary student entrance, but that will be locked down at the start of the school day, as will all of the other exterior doors. So we really don't think construction is going to be a deterrent at all to our security efforts. For us, the mistake that we can make is we can say, well, this is Sunnyvale, it's just not going to happen here. And I don't want us to be guilty of that. I don't want us to feel like that, small community and nothing bad happens here. That can't be the world that we live in. So we have taken the situation seriously. We've spent a lot of hours talking about how we can make this the most safe, secure environment possible. But the thing that we don't want, more than anything, the thing, and I say I'll personalize it, that I don't want, is I don't want our kids, my kids, coming to school feeling scared, not feeling secure in their environment. I want this to be a place that you guys, first day, you get out of your car and you sprint to because you're excited to be back to SHS. That's got to be there. And, you know, my passion is that. We've worked hard at it, and I want our parents, I want our students to know that we're going to be ready for this to be a great school year.